Snow. It was beautiful weather in San Diego. It was beautiful weather down the hill from the pass. It was beautiful weather on the road there, but Cajon Pass is closed because of snow. In fact, they're escorting cars through, policemen are escorting cars through one car at a time from where I am at the arrow to all the way through the green. They're escorting cars one at a time. And I'm there at the bottom, and I'm thinking, what in the world? And they're estimating it's going to take about 2 hours before they can get Cajon Pass opened again. It's California. We don't have salt trucks, plows. I mean, those things, they're just not commonly done out there. And so I don't even know what they were doing to clear the roads. Like, are there guys out there with shovels? I don't know. But that said, it's going to take about 2 hours to get the roads cleared. So I'm sitting down there at the bottom, parked in traffic, thinking, this is bad news. I have to get home, and it is Christmas Eve, and I need to get back up there. What am I going to do? Okay, so just to zoom in a little bit, you can see that's the whole stretch called the Cajon Pass. Well, I stopped off at a gas station there just south of the pass, and I bought a map. And I didn't have a GPS or smartphone. Today, now, I've got an Android phone with the GPS thing. I am unstoppable. But back then I had a little bit of some trouble. So I got a map, and I looked at the map, and I started strategizing. What can I do? And this was my strategy.
Oh my gosh.
I look at that now and I think I'm an idiot. But so that was my strategy, okay? My strategy, I was at the gas station, I was stopped, the road, the traffic was going. So I decided I'm just going to, instead of going through the mountains, I'll go around the mountains. There's no other path to take except for those winding little yellow roads that are, the switchback things on mountain drives. And I knew that was going to take forever. So I decided to go all the way around the mountains. So from San Bernardino through Rancho Cucamonga to Pasadena, where the Rose Parade is, all the way around the San Fernando Valley, back up to Palmdale, and then Lancaster, and eventually back over to Victorville. That was my strategy. Do not blame me, because one thing did not concern me at that time. Seriously, the thought never crossed my mind, perhaps I should measure this. Because you can use your thumb to measure on a map, how much is a mile, and then you do the thumb thing all along, and then you do this multiplication thing to try to, and I just knew I didn't want to be in the traffic jam, okay? The traffic jam was bad news. So I start going that way, and by the time I get about halfway to Pasadena, so right at the very bottom middle of the map, I'm listening to the radio, and guess what I hear? Pass is open, right. It took about 20 minutes for the pass to open after I left. But I'm thinking, I'm not going to turn around now. I'm on an adventure. Let's do this thing. Let's roll these dice. And I go, and it takes me 4 hours to get all the way around the mountains back across to Apple Valley, to my hometown. So I left expecting a 3-hour trip. It ended up being something like 6 or 7. I don't even remember how long it took. But I eventually made it there. And here's the thing. If you had asked, if I look back at that now, if you had told me that my path, well, number one, if I had actually drawn it out on a map and seen how ludicrous it was, I probably wouldn't have taken it. If you had told me it would take me 4 hours to get around the mountains, I probably would not have taken the path. I probably would not have gone that way. But I'm glad I did. Because of this. Right up there, this long, straight stretch of road from Palmdale to Victorville, I experienced the most beautiful snowstorm ever. It was Christmas Eve, and it's California roads, so the way snow falls in the high desert is different from most places. The snow has like decades to just build up there, And so by the time it comes down, the flakes are huge. They're like these big fluffy things that are just sort of hovering down there, and they're falling down, and they don't stick on the road because nothing's cold enough. But everything's so dry that they don't really melt or anything. They're just kind of blowing everywhere. And so visibility was low, but it was beautiful. There's these flakes just fluttering down, and I'm driving along, and I'm just stunned. I've never seen anything like this before. It was absolutely incredible. I made it home with like an hour to spare before the service. It all worked out just fine. My mom asked me what happened. I told her the story. She blamed me. But I know, even though I would have said no to this, at the moment, I now say, wow, that was a beautiful experience. So here's the whole journey. I came up, hit the pass, took a U-turn, and went all the way around the mountains. Because that was bad news. And that was good news. See, there was something in me that was so bad about waiting, so bad about the unknown, so bad about that one path that I was willing to go on a very, very long, difficult, roundabout path to get to where I knew I needed to go. Good news is great news if the bad news is bad enough and the good news answers it. I want to take you to some passages of Mark now to show you the bad news. Because see, Jesus is saying we need to repent, and if we need to repent, it's because there's some bad news out there. On the path we're currently on has some bad news, and he wants us to be on a different path. And that different path is good news. So here we go. We're going to open it up to Mark chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. And what we're going to find is that Jesus doesn't give us a really clear, simple explanation of what the bad news is. Mark takes us on the journey of Jesus' life, and he gives us one story, and then another story, and then another story, and all together, the stories together build up one hint, and then another hint, and then another hint, until we eventually get the bad news. And here's our first hint. It comes in chapter 6, verse 1. Jesus left where he was there and went to his hometown. He's going home, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things, they asked. What's this wisdom that's been given him? What are these remarkable miracles he's performing? That's the same question that the other people have been asking. Everybody's been asking the same questions. Who is this guy? What are these amazing miracles? This is phenomenal. This is wonderful. He's healing people. He's casting out demons. But these people take it one step further in verse 3. Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. They took offense at him. In our world today, we live in a society where if you're, say, for example, you were raised in Lafayette and then you go off somewhere and you become super famous, and then you come back to Lafayette, they throw a party for you. And they're like, hey, it's a party. And someone says, yeah, I knew him when I was in high school. He was a nerd, but we all kind of thought he had some potential or whatever. I don't know. But, I knew the guy when he was in high school. And everybody's like, you knew him? Oh, that's cool. And everybody thinks that's cool. That's today's world. But back in that world, back then, it was kind of a little bit different. They were like, this guy's bringing shame onto this family. I mean, I imagine there was probably this older woman in the town who was like, oh, isn't that sweet? Little Jesus is grown up to be such a fine young man. Or maybe there's this guy and he's like, oh, dude, that guy's off his rocker. I don't know what's going on with him. Or maybe there's just this neighbor, who's like, come on, Jesus, you're supposed to be a carpenter. My table's still messed up. Come on, help me out. I don't know what the deal is, but they took offense at him. Somehow, for some reason, Jesus has done all these amazing things, and now check this out. Verse 4, Jesus says, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home. He could not do any miracles there, except lay his hands on a few people and heal them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. Jesus, either because somehow he couldn't or because he chose not to, did not do many miracles there. Because the people simply wouldn't even have enough faith to come up to him. Maybe he didn't do many miracles there because no one asked. No one said, Jesus, would you heal my daughter? Because no one believed he could. I don't even know what's going on there, but I do know this. I know that the people who knew Jesus best believed in him the least. That's your first hint. Go ahead and jot that down. The people who believed in the people who knew Jesus the best believed in him the least. They thought they knew him so well that when he did something outside of their comfort zone, they couldn't accept it. He's just a carpenter. In a couple weeks, I'm going to go back home to California to be at my parents' church for a Sunday. And it's because my dad is celebrating his 40th anniversary of being a pastor, and also, I think, his 65th birthday. And we're going out there for party, for a big celebration kind of thing. So I'm going to be out there, and I know a lot of the people in the church that my dad leads knew me when I was a kid. Okay? I think subconsciously that's one of the reasons I'm all the way out here in Indiana. Because, I know if I was out there in California, if I needed a job or if I wanted to have a job or something, I could call my dad and he'd be like, okay, come on, we'll hire you. You can be my associate, or you can even be the teaching pastor, whatever. I don't know what he'd do. But what I know is all the people out there in the congregation, they'd be thinking, I remember that guy when he was running around the sanctuary wearing the Batman cape, holding the Pooh Bear, and throwing paper airplanes. Because that's what I did. And maybe they'd respect me. Maybe they'd be proud of me or something. I know they're sort of proud of me. The church is a very big sponsor of our church, things like that. I know they're kind of proud of me. But there'd also be that whole, I remember when he was a kid. I babysat for him. I changed his diapers or whatever. I played the piano when he was in Sunday school. Whatever the deal was, they all have these stories of me when I was that. And that's what's going on with Jesus. And I am nowhere near Jesus, and he's doing far more than I ever will. He's raising the dead and healing the sick. And now these people are rejecting him far more harshly than I've ever experienced. This is crazy to me. What is wrong with people that they won't receive someone who says, I will heal your sick? I don't understand that. That's just a hint of something that's really bad news. Let's go on to the next one. If you keep reading in verse 6, where we stopped at the end of the sentence, let's keep reading at the next sentence. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village. So he left his hometown. He couldn't do many miracles there. So he leaves and he goes around teaching from village to village. This is actually important. Jesus is in a town that should be a great town, but they don't receive him, so he leaves. And now check out what he says. He says this, calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits. He's giving his disciples authority over demons. So they're going to be able to cast out demons and heal the sick. That sounds pretty cool. And now what I want from Jesus is for him to give the disciples instructions on how to do it. I want him to give the disciples instructions on how to cast out demons. What thoughts do you think? What words do you say? What attitude do you take? How do you cast out a demon? How do you identify a demon? What do you do to heal someone? I want Jesus to give them instructions, because if he gives them instructions, I can eavesdrop, right? Then I can pay attention, be like, okay, so that's what a demon casting out thing should really be all about.